Chapter 6. Due to Papa's inventiveness, the dishwasher turned out better than we expected. One day, he came home with a huge piece of marble. After he swiped off Mama's junk, he placed it on top of the dishwasher. Then he busied himself with pots and pans and wooden spoons. "Get your hands covered with butter and I'll show you how to pull taffy." That lasted until his next trip to the dentist, after which he changed to fudge. In the meantime, the dishwasher had created one other unforeseeable compilation. It occupied the space where Mama had kept the kitchen stool Papa had built for us to get into the high cupboards. "I don't know why Papa built those high cupboards," Mama often remarked. We girls knew why, and Mama did too, for that matter. To quote Papa, it was very scientific. High cupboards used space which, in most houses, went to waste because architects, darn fools, didn't study people's needs. They studied Michelangelo. Papa explained the great advantage. You keep the little-used utensils in the high cupboards and the everyday things in the low cupboards. It should have worked out well, but didn't, mainly because of the kitchen stool. Like everything else that Papa built, it was strong, safe, and heavy to move. So heavy to move, in fact, that after Mama had expended so much energy getting some little-used utensil down, it seemed too much effort to get it back up again. She didn't dare put the little-used item into the regular cupboards because Papa would spot it and call for immediate action. Therefore, she would leave it sitting on the drain board with the words, "I'll be using this again soon." As it worked out, the upper cupboard things stacked up on the drain board until Papa had one of his fits. "I don't know how you can prepare a meal with all this junk cluttering your workspace." After the dishwasher came, we stored the stool in the pantry, unused. Unfortunately, it cut off access to Mama's 2 big bins, where she stored the sugar and flour. If Mama had been a little bit thinner, she might have been able to squeeze around the stool. But because Mama made lots of cakes and baking powder biscuits, she was not a little bit thinner. She was, in fact, rather plump. Whenever Mama was baking and wanted to get into the bins, she had to pull the stool out a bit, which put it right into the pathway of the swinging door. This was not our only access into the kitchen, but it was certainly our preferred route. Otherwise, we had to go the long way around, down the long hall, past the dark stairway, past the telephone nook where Mama stored more pencils and tablets than a stationery store. Papa said if she didn't clean it out, he was going to board it up. Past the long telephone cord that we were bound to stumble over if the last person on the phone hadn't wound it up. Past the hooks that Papa built for us to hang our coats, sweaters, hats, scarves, mittens, and other clutter on. Past the leaded glass window that looked out over the backyard, and finally through the door and into the kitchen. We didn't go that way very often. Whenever Mama could be heard rustling around greasing baking tins, it caused a flow of traffic into the kitchen by all the members of the household interested in licking pans. This included everyone except Papa, who, if he wasn't talking on the phone, would be studying his briefs in his big chair by the window that overlooked the lake. With the increased traffic came an increased banging of the swinging door on the kitchen stool. Ordinarily, Papa had great concentration. He prided himself in that. He said that's why he won so many court cases, and why we could have steak for dinner, whereas lawyers who couldn't keep their minds on their briefs had to eat vegetable soup. But on occasion, Papa lost his concentration, on the 10th or 11th banging of the door against the kitchen stool. Then he would raise up, spewing words that Mama said were not proper for young ladies to hear. "Damn it, Tenny, they're tearing down the house. You've got to figure out something else to do with that stool." But Mama was not scientific. The best she could think of was to put it on the back porch to use as a bird feeder. But Papa was incensed. It's too good for birds to be pooping on it. One day, he came home with a mysterious bundle, swept off the bird poop, and brought the stool back into the kitchen. "I sheared the sheep on the farm, so I think I should be able to shear my own kids." That didn't sound good to Mama, but what could she do? She went down to the basement to do the ironing, not on her ironing board like the other housewives in the neighborhood, but on her huge new mangle, another of Papa's fire sale acquisitions. Papa had raved about the advantages. "You can iron sheets on it." "For the Olympic Hotel?" Mama asked. Meanwhile, Papa set us up one by one on the stool, wrapped us in a big towel, then, snipping the scissors rapidly in midair until he got the feel, set to work. His first experiment we called boyish bobs. We girls weren't enthused, and when Mama saw us, she cried, "Look what you've done to my little girls." Papa admitted that he had gotten carried away, but claimed she was lucky we all had good-shaped heads. But what will they look like in their party dresses? Mama wept. They'll look like 3 little girls with good-shaped heads. No, they'll look like 3 little boys with good-shaped heads. Papa's solution was as old as Samson. It'll grow out. That was true. The problem was that Papa was always there wearing his hair-cutting outfit. Now, how would you like me to cut it this time? Please, Papa, cut it longer this time. But a little longer it never was. Papa had an expression that pretty well summed up the hair-cutting situation. Actually, it summed up his whole philosophy of life. Could be worse, but not much. Mama's philosophy was more positive and covered everything we ever did. Always act like a lady. Mama said it had always worked in her life. We couldn't dispute that. Papa said he doubted it would work in his life. We couldn't dispute that either. A good case in point was the matter of getting into the kitchen cupboards. Reaching anything above the lowest shelf was a problem for Mama because, as Papa said, she's a little short on one end. But as Mama continued acting like a lady, a wonderful thing began to happen. Not that Mama's legs began to grow, but the legs of the 2 oldest little Bighams did. Mama never again had to drag the stool across the buckled linoleum, not due for replacement until Papa sold the dishwasher. All she had to do was call out, "Will one of you nice tall girls please come and open the cupboards for me?" We nice tall girls weren't always thrilled about having our daily lives constantly interrupted. Mama apologized. When I was little, I never had to open cupboards because I had a nanny to do it for me. We know, Mama, we know. When Mama talked about her nanny, she often took the opportunity to tell about a historical event which had been one of the most memorable of her life. She would begin by explaining that when she was small, her family had moved from Wabash, Indiana, where she was born, to Atlanta, Georgia. My grandfather, Albert Taylor, and my grandmother, Fanny J. Stoops, were married for 27 years when she died. 14 months later, my grandfather married a divorced widow from Atlanta and moved there. My parents, who were breeders of racehorses, decided to move there too, Mama explained. Your parents were horse traders. Papa loved badgering Mama. He knew her propensity for putting the best shine on every story, so he figured that if he darkened things up a bit, we'd have a truer picture. Mama ignored him. We had not been there long when the Spanish-American War was declared, and Grandpa Taylor, who was 51 at the time, volunteered and went off to Cuba. He was a musician and played in the band, Mama explained. He played the drums, Papa countered. What about your daddy? We asked. The smile left Mama's eyes. He was a Quaker, and they don't believe in military service. Won't he ever come and visit us? Maybe someday. This was the most Mama said about her father in spite of our questions. We were disappointed. What was so awful that she couldn't tell us? Mama was now at the momentous occasion. At the time, it was announced that the President of the United States, William McKinley, was coming to Atlanta. And of course we know you went to see him, Papa said. Mama tolerated Papa's badgering because she knew that her story would ultimately leave him speechless. It was the most momentous event in my life. I thought the most momentous event in your life was when you married me, Papa said. That was the second most momentous event, Mama consoled him and continued. I was chosen to ride my pony in front of the presidential carriage. Mama went on to tell us the details of the great event. I had a hard time picturing my mother riding on a beautiful black horse, but she had a picture in the box that she kept on top of her dresser. With these visions of Mama astride a beautiful black horse, is it any wonder that we weren't impressed with Papa's stories of his childhood in Wisconsin? Up at 5 o'clock in morning to milk 8 cows before he trudged 10 miles through the snowbanks to school. In spite of our negative comments, Papa had great faith in snowbanks. He said that that's what had made him logical, sensible, and down to earth, and that if more Southerners, including Mama, had to walk through more snowbanks. Mama interrupted. I didn't have to walk through snowbanks because, we know, you had a nanny to do it for you. Mama's story always left us wishing we could have a momentous event in our lives. One day in July, when the flies were getting pesky and I was 7 years old, our opportunity came. Papa told us, the President of the United States is coming to Seattle, and we're going to see him. We were having dinner on the back porch, and Papa was holding door while waving his fork, one that had been bent by the washing machine, trying to keep a fly out of his potato salad. Dunny McNabb happened along, and Flora informed him, We're going to see President William McKinley. It's not McKinley we're going to see, it's President Warren Harding, Papa explained. Warren G. Harding, Duncan corrected. And I'm going to see him too. How come you're using that funny fork? Papa became slightly red in the face, and I didn't think it was the mustard that Mama had set on the table by the hot dogs. Luckily, Fleur interrupted. But I thought Mr. McKinley was the president. William McKinley was president when your mother was little, Papa explained, and Warren Harding is president now. Dunny went on, I'm going to guard the parade route. You and who else? Papa asked sarcastically. All the Boy Scouts in Seattle, Dunny said. President Harding is the honorary president of the Boy Scouts of America, you know. No, I didn't know that. I never got to be a Boy Scout. I was too busy milking cows. Boy Scouts don't milk cows, Dunny said. Well, the cows can be thankful for that. When the momentous day arrived, Mama laid out our best dresses and our new black patent leather Mary Janes. Papa said we looked so pretty that he would take us to the Elks Club for lunch. That was supposed to make us happy, but it made me nervous instead. We girls had been to the Elks Club only once before. Mama had bought us a bag of hard candy with instructions to sit in a corner, suck on the candy, and wait for Papa. We were tiptoeing through the large marble foyer, fully aware of the echoes from the smallest sound, when Fleur dropped the candy. The bag exploded and the candy shot out in all directions. When Papa arrived, ready to introduce the three little Bighams to business friends, there we were scrambling under desks and davenports retrieving the candy, and there went Mama's theory that candy could solve any problem. Papa attached flag holders to the car fenders, and we drove all over town with flags flying. It made me feel very patriotic. Even though we had started out early, the traffic was heavy. Papa explained that it was a great thing for Seattle, that the president had come all the way across the country on the train, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Papa got us a good spot along the street where we were able to put up camp stools to watch the parade. Oh, the excitement, colorful uniforms, bands blaring, horses decked out like the ceiling in the Pantages Theater, and clowns. Oh, how I loved the clowns. Suddenly a deep voice called out, There he is! Papa, where is he? I began tugging on Papa's leg. Papa pointed out into the middle of the street. He's in the big black car. I couldn't believe my eyes. Could that man in the dark suit be President Warren G. Harding? There was nothing remarkable about him at all. I waved my little flag like others in the crowd, but frankly, I was not enthused. I decided I didn't want to grow up and be president. I wanted to grow up and be a clown. After the parade, it was off to the Elks Club. Papa, a charter member, was well known, and it made us feel important that everyone greeted him as if he was the president or something. Papa was feeling congenial and introduced us in his usual way. This is my wife, Tenny, and these are my Pacific Coast babies. And we're still waiting to move to Alaska so Papa can have a son, Fleur said. Everyone laughed and Mama blushed. Fleur said, We went to the parade to see President McKinley today. How did you accomplish that? One of Papa's friends asked. President McKinley was assassinated 20 years ago. It must have been President Harding you saw today. Fleur wasn't even embarrassed at the dumb mistake. She just smiled while Papa explained the mix-up. As a matter of fact, when Tenny was little, she had an encounter with President McKinley in Atlanta, Georgia. It was a big event in her life. She's from a prominent family that raised racehorses. I looked at Papa in disbelief as he continued to embellish Mama's story. Tenny often showed the family horses, and when they had a contest to choose the best young rider in Atlanta, she won. That meant she got to ride her pony in front of the presidential carriage. I looked at Mama to see if she was suffering from disbelief too, but she was radiant, as if she was witnessing the third most momentous event in her life. A few days later, we heard a newsboy on Seward Park Avenue calling out the day's headlines. President Harding taken ill. Papa dashed out for a paper and read that President Harding had been aboard a naval vessel on his return trip from Alaska. Mama showed us his picture and remarked that Papa looked like him. They say he likes the ladies, and that his wife is very jealous. You're not supposed to say things like that about your president, Papa said. If he was a Democrat, you'd say those things and more. If he was a Democrat, those things would be true. On August 2nd, 1923, we heard, President Harding is dead. The nation was shocked. For weeks, there were rumors about the cause of death. Fleur asked, was he assassinated like President McKinley? Papa said, well, there's been a rumor around town that his wife poisoned him because of suspected infidelity. What's suspected infidelity, Papa? It's something Democrats think up to try to get Republicans out of office. Mama didn't like the way Papa always diverted us. It's something wives suspect their husbands of. Papa said, could be worse, but not much.